Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. I'm your host, Joe Jackson. Alongside me, as always, is my co-host, Kraig Bowers, here to preview Purdue versus Minnesota. Purdue looking to bounce back after a historically large deficit of a loss in Mackey Arena against Iowa State, but they get another Big Ten opponent in Minnesota who just beat last week Indiana at home. The game is on Wednesday, December 10th. It is a 7 o'clock Eastern time tip, will be on Big Ten Network. So a game obviously Purdue needs to get right. A game where I think the sky isn't for sure falling, but want to just get back on the right track, have a couple games in a row upcoming that Purdue should be able to be in control, and this being one of them. But we'll break down everything you need to know about Minnesota and the game right here. Kraig, throw it to you, just kind of your thoughts on Minnesota and any thoughts on just kind of Purdue bouncing back.
As a Purdue fan, I always think the worst time of college basketball season are the days in between a loss and the next game. Like you just want and I'm sure in a player's mind too, right? Like let's get to the next game. Let's just like move on, get a win, like start the new narrative over, all of that type of stuff. And I don't know about everybody else listening to the show, but I've gotten to the point like after a loss like the other night, I kind of tune out social media pods, everything else, and just kind of wait for that next game to come around so that I can see the Boilers back out there, hopefully get a win, get back on the right track, and then I'll start to pay attention a little bit to everything else that's being said out there because the overreactions tend to be pretty dramatic in this industry at this point in time for me a lot of times I think. But no, man, I watched I watched a Minnesota game coming into this. A team to me that I think is transformed a little bit from who they were last year. Obviously, first year coach Nico Medved coming in at 5-4. I did pronounce that right, didn't I?
Yep.
Awesome. Coming in to this game at 5-4, they were picked to finish 16th in the preseason polls for the Big Ten Conference. Joe Jackson over at Feed the Post has Minnesota week 4. Oh, did you release a new one yet or not?
Like 20 minutes ago.
Okay, so I get off the hook for not have read the new one yet, but
They didn't
you have them
move.
six. Okay, so still at 16th in your power rankings for the Big Ten. As we've seen with many teams, a team that when there's a changeover in coach certainly loses a lot of production, only returns 12% of minutes from last year's team and only 8% of scoring. I just looking through the numbers, I think there were a few things that really jumped out to me. One, it's a slow tempo team, 355th, I think, in Ken Palm when I looked the other day. So a team that's going to play even slower than Purdue tempo wise in terms of what they want to do. And my God, they shoot a lot of free throws from just like looking at where their point distribution comes from and looking at free throw attempts per field goal attempt. Certainly a team that does do a lot of that. Familiar name on this team for a lot of people if they watch college basketball in general. And Cade Tyson, who played for North Carolina last year, was kind of a highly touted transfer from Belmont before that. Didn't really work out at North Carolina, comes to Minnesota, and it's working out a lot different. We'll get into that when we talk to more into the player breakdowns. But I guess for you, as you look through the analytics, of how this Minnesota team matches up in terms of what they do well, what they don't do well, what jumps out to you?
I think one thing that just stands out is their 3-point percentage, and not like they're shooting 31.7%. That's 233rd in the country. It just feels like it should be way more, and it does feel like at some point they will break through in that category. We'll get into the player breakdowns, but Cade Tyson's really the only big time shooter right now who's producing at that level. Bobby Durkin is getting there, and he's coming off of a slump, but like this is a team that just generates a lot of open threes, and they just they simply are not making them. Per synergy, they're shooting 29% on open catch and shoot threes, and they have one of the higher open catch and shoot three rates like in the conference. So they are getting good looks and simply not making them. I think that can maybe be attested to a little bit too with like the assists. They're fifth in the country in assist rates. The other thing that maybe not an analytic, but this team is injured. Just they are dealing with injuries. Chauncey Willis just got announced last week. Their starting point guard. He's done for the season with a foot injury. Before the season, Trance Stevens, a transfer from Maryland, a sharpshooter, he's sidelined for the entire season. BJ Omot is still trying to work his way back from an offseason injury. And then their starting center through the first 5 games, Robert Viola, he got hurt in the fifth game, a knee injury, has not returned. Maybe he could be back. Have been trying to find stuff and haven't really seen anything specific. So this is a team that they just beat Indiana last week. They have 8 scholarship players currently available to them right now. And honestly, like one of them, Medved, does not want to play whatsoever. One of them's a true freshman and one of them's a redshirt freshman off the bench. So not a super deep team right now for Minnesota, and obviously some of it or a good chunk of it being just that they simply don't have the bodies to be able to do that. They're only averaging 16 bench points a game, one of the lower ones in the country. So I wanted to just kind of get that
Yeah.
ramble out of the way because it is important to the makeup of this current team.
Yeah, there weren't many guys getting. I mean, the minute concentration was really high towards the starters before Willis got hurt, and with Willis getting hurt, it's even going to go more that way, certainly. One other thing that jumped out to me: they are fifth in the entire country in assists per field goals made, which is a good thing in terms of the fact that they move the ball, they have some good action, all of that type of stuff. But I watched the Missouri game. I'm not sure which games you've watched in Minnesota, but in that one specifically, I was like, man, who are they going to one on one when like they really need a bucket? That game, Missouri zoned them quite a bit. I'm assuming that's Tyson, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of guys on that team that necessarily had the ability to just face up and try to make a play and score on their own, which obviously is a criticism that sometimes comes Purdue's way as well. The free throw thing to me just it jumped out because Purdue is a team that's one of the best teams in the country in terms of not fouling. So with Minnesota generating what they do at the free throw line and Purdue being a team that doesn't put guys on the line all that much, will be interesting to see how that plays out. In terms of, as you've watched them, what this Minnesota team likes to do from a schematic, philosophical standpoint on the defensive, offensive end, I guess what do we need to know about them?
Yeah, starting with the offensive side of the ball, it is a very kind of heavy off-ball movement team. They aren't going to run too many pick and rolls. One of the lowest pick and roll rates in the entire conference. Lots of off-ball screens, lots of cuts. For anybody that watched the Minnesota versus Indiana game, like they kind of torched the Hoosiers with just backdoor cuts. And it's often a 5-out offense, especially if Viola is not back. That means their starting center is 6'8" Jalen Crocker Johnson, who's more of a true forward. Uh, but everybody on the floor pretty much has the capability of passing and making plays. So they'll move the ball back and forth along the perimeter, back cuts, 45 cuts, and then flow into handoffs or flow into pin downs from there. It is just a team that offensively has a lot of movement, lots of good sets. Uh, like you said, not a ton of like one-on-one isolation. That's not really who they are. They're not, like I said, even a huge pick and roll team. It is more built off of off ball movement and getting advantages that way. And then defensively, they're a team that has done a good job protecting the interior so far. They're a team that's going to primarily high hedge. Now, as they have gotten into some funkier lineups, right, with Jalen Crocker Johnson at the 5, like Bobby Durkin at the 4, they can switch more stuff if they need to. But generally speaking, more of a high hedge team against pick and roll, going to try to take away the paints. They help a lot. They're a team that's going to give up more threes, and they've given up a good chunk of open threes from that. So we think to Purdue, right, that's a team that in theory should have a lot of shooters. Had a bad shooting night. Hopefully you're getting a bounce back there from Purdue's standpoint. But trying to also look up because I haven't seen them face too many post ups. They're not a team that doubles too much, but as is I think I will say every single time probably for a team that doesn't double. Most teams have not faced somebody like TKR yet, so that can always change. But yeah, do a good job protecting the interior, have some solid perimeter defenders, but it is more of just trying to physically keep the ball out of the paint.
Yeah, and that was a thing that jumped out to me in terms of just Looking on KenPom at 3-point percentage that they give up, 37.2% to opposing offenses, which is 311th in the country. So, like you said, to me, and when you look at point distribution, a lot of shots for whoever they're trying to defend come from that 3-point line. So they give some looks there, and teams shoot a relatively high percentage. Purdue should knock them down. They should. We saw them get quite a few open looks the other night, and they didn't go down, but they should. And JG Trends was just mocking me today. He put out a graphic of how incredible Purdue is from a 3-point shooting standpoint right after Purdue shot 18% in the previous game. But trends should come back to kind of, water should find its level. This team should be able to take advantage of it from that standpoint. I just watching, you know, going back and watching that game, this Minnesota team seems physical though. And they're not big down low. I don't mean it in that way, but perimeter wise, they've got length across their guards and wings. I think Isaac Asuma is 6'3", but everybody else is 6'4" or taller. Small forward, power forward, both at 6'7". Not the biggest at the center spot, but they've got some, kind of longer physical guys on the defensive end. It just felt like they played with a physical intensity in that game.
Yes, I think that they can do that for sure. This isn't a team that's going to be built on their defense. Like it hasn't been awesome, but it is right trying to their hardest to take away shots at the rim, and that's going to come with some of the physicality. And um, even on the perimeter, like Langston Reynolds we'll talk about him more. He's a very physical guard. Asama is like not quite as physical as Reynolds, but still more of a physical guard. Yeah, it's an interesting matchup, I think, from Purdue's standpoint. Like, obviously, Minnesota is nowhere near Iowa State's, but you look through, like, Cade Tyson's going to be their small forward. He's similar to Momcilovic in
Yeah.
the way that he's able to score and move. Not an exact one for one by any means, but very similar in that aspect. They have a stretch four. Like, there's just some things on both sides of the floor that it'll be interesting, but they are very small at the center spot. If Viola's not back, their starter will be 6'8", 240-pound Jalen Crocker Johnson, and the backup is Grayson Grove, who's 6'9" at 220 pounds, and he's definitely on the scrawny side too.
Yeah, and even Viola, when he was in, he's 6'8", 265, right? Like he's not
Yeah,
the biggest guy. I mean, he's big bodied, like he's wide bodied, but not the
yeah, he's
tallest
not
guy in the
tall.
world still, right? Yeah, yeah. All right. I think that's a good segue into the players. And we're going to talk about Cade Tyson first because he leads the team with 21.8 points per game, 4.7 rebounds, and 1.9 assists. He's shooting 37% from three on the year, but he can attack at all three levels and score. I did not see him shooting any Dirk Nowitzki fall away, fade away, falling 5 feet away from where he took off and hitting them like Momcilovic did against Purdue the other day. But still, absolutely a weapon for this team.
Yeah, he's going to be their go-to guy. He isn't going to like handle the ball all that much, bringing it up and initiating, but he's the focus off ball where he's going to either be spotting up and knock it down, or he's going to be cutting, running off of screens. He's somebody that Purdue absolutely has to be aware of, really at all levels of the floor. As is kind of the theme with Minnesota, they don't take many mid-range shots in general. Tyson is part of that, where it's either getting all the way to the rim where he's been great, or knocking down threes from the perimeter. It's been a heavy volume of both. Also has done a very good job of getting to the free throw line. He's just somebody at 6'7". Like he has enough handle to kind of go create when he needs to, has enough size to shoot over people, and just enough strength and physicality to get all the way to the rim to absorb contact to get to the free throw line, where he's been a very good free throw shooter throughout his career. So it's been a really good fit for him at Minnesota, just being able to bounce back from UNC. And he's going to be like the big question of like, if we're going by heights and that, and I know we'll talk about the others in a sec, like this is in theory who Lawyer gets, and I don't know if that's what they'll do, but like that's another very tough matchup if that is going to be Lawyer who's on him.
Yeah, and Durkin's basically the same height, right? Same build,
Yeah.
relatively speaking.
Yep.
So I was interested in that too, watching that. Like, who are they gonna put Lawyer on Tyson, or are they gonna put Lawyer on Durkin? Who, to me, Durkin's more of a true 3-point shooter. I think from a standpoint of percentage of what he's taken from two on the year, yeah, he's taken less than 1-2 a game. So in my head, I kind of wonder, like, do they throw Lawyer there, try to guard
Yeah. What
Tyson with a four?
Let's circle back to this towards the end because I just kind of had some thoughts pop
Okay.
in, but I want to let's talk about some of the other players because then it'll make
All
more
right. All right.
sense.
All right, perfect. So, second leading scorer on this team right now is Jalen Crocker Johnson, who Joe mentioned, likely going to be the starting center, 6'8", 240-pound junior, 12.2 points a game, 8.9 rebounds. Not an outside offensive threat whatsoever, but kind of a dog on the boards.
Just he's when you talk about the physicality that you did earlier, like he is the leader of that. Played for Colorado State last year under Medved. Just kind of this like wonkier stretch four sorta that wants to be physical and get downhill. Like he hasn't been super efficient shooting the ball from three, although he can definitely knock him down. He hasn't been like honestly super efficient scoring the ball in general, but he can be physical. He can get to the rim, gets to the free throw line well, and then is a great rebounder. Also, probably their best rim protector on the team in terms of just pure being able to protect the rim. Just he's not like if we're comparing to Iowa State, he's not anywhere close to Joshua Jefferson talent wise. Like I want to make that abundantly clear, but he's sort of that mold of this like 6'8" build who can sort of handle the ball if you need to, can sort of shoot. Again, not comparing him to him exactly. Joshua Jefferson's much better, but Crocker kind of fits that molds and brings a real physicality and toughness to the squad.
Yeah. And something we probably should have mentioned as we were kind of going through some of the numbers earlier is this is a pretty good rebounding team and the standpoint that they collect 36.2% of their offensive rebounds, which is good for kind of high 50s in terms of national rank, and only give up 24.9% to the opposing team. So that'll be interesting to watch as Purdue has really excelled in those areas lately in most games since TKR has been back to see who kind of wins that battle. Let's jump to Langston Reynolds. We've brought his name up a couple times. 6'4", 215-pound senior, 10.6 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 2.9 assists. Seems like a guy that like he invites contact. He wants to get downhill, and it's like he's looking for contact first to kind of absorb it and maybe create some space off of it and then try to score at the rim or at least in the paint from relatively close to the rim.
Yeah, he's not somebody. He has not scored. I take that back. Made 1 3 on the year. That is his only bucket outside of the paint all season. He's only had 5 buckets all season that haven't been at the rim. At 6'4", he wants to get downhill. He wants to get to the rim. He's kind of operating as their pseudo point guard now with Chauncey Willis out. Him and Asma kind of can split those responsibilities to a degree. But yeah, he's just very physical. Is just going to drive. Like he's not somebody that's going to shoot the ball at all. Defensively, he is kind of another physical defender type. I don't think he's like an elite defender by any means, but I think he's pretty good in what he's capable of, what he wants to do, in terms of just applying that perimeter pressure, trying to get into ball handlers. So has been a solid enough piece kind of for them, especially filling in now as a starter. He was more of a sixth man before. But yeah, also we talked about he does get to the free throw line a lot. He's not a good free throw shooter. Like he's a 58% career free throw shooter, 41% on the season. So there is that aspect also.
Yeah. So the other guard at 6'3", 205-pound sophomore, Isaac Asuma, 9.9 points a game, 4.3 assists, leads this team on assist. I was really impressed with some of his passing in this game. And you mentioned the 45 cuts earlier on, but one thing, I think they do that really well. It seemed like as for the guys who do want to drive and kind of get into the paint, Tyson did it a couple times where, he was on one side and somebody do a 45 cut from the other side and find him with kind of everybody paying attention to the guy backing his way down to the basket or trying to bully his way to the basket, I guess, at times. But anyway, we're talking about Asuma. I thought he was a pretty nice facilitator in that game that I watched. Seems like he's a streaky three-point shooter. Like he hit 2 and looked super confident, and then like brick the next 4 or 5 weren't even close. I don't know what his career three-point shooting percentage is, but 32% this year on 4.6 attempts per game.
Yeah, he's starting to take that sophomore leap. He's somebody I've been pretty high on. I've really liked the game last year going into his freshman season and is starting to really take that leap. I think the biggest thing, and I noticed even from I think their first game was November 3rd, whatever, November 3rd or 4th or whatever their day that was. The first game, like he just seemed so much more confident. And it was just like he seemed very much ready to be like, yeah, I can help run this team. Again, those responsibilities are just growing with the injuries piling up. Has been a good facilitator. I've liked a lot of the decision making. He's been comfortable running more pick and rolls when needed. One of the few guys that is really going to, if he needs to, can work on or off ball, is a true combo guard in that sense. And the shooting hasn't quite been there. He's a career 34% three-point shooter. Like he can knock them down. Hasn't quite been there this year. So he's still going to be willing to fire. Has been a fine finisher on the interior, nothing like crazy. And he's a good defender. Very active hands, moves his feet very well laterally. Him and Reynolds are just kind of a nobody's going to call them like the best defensive backcourt in the Big Ten by any means, but they're both kind of solid in their own ways.
The last starter, Bobby Durkin, 6'7", 220-pound junior, comes in averaging 6.8 points per game. He comes from Davidson
They
over to Minnesota. And I'm going to be honest, like watching him, he was one of those guys that I was like, I feel like he should be producing more than he is. Like you watch his shot, and I mean, it looks pretty. It looks pure in terms of his form. He hit a little like head fake, sidestep three in that game, and I'm like, oh, like he's a shooter. And based upon the shot attempts he takes, it appears they think he's a shooter also, but not really necessarily producing at a high level. I think the lowest scoring of the starters, only 33% from three on the year. What's your take on him?
He's somebody that was brought in to be a shooter. It hasn't fully translated yet, and a lot of it is him just missing open threes. He's 5 of 18 on open threes this season. Like at some point, you just kind of do expect those to start falling, but he has enough skill elsewhere where he's a good connector piece for this offense, right? Everybody kind of has to have some capability of passing and driving a bit, and he has those, even if he is more of just a pure shooter. I do think he's somebody that can be attacked a bit defensively, and when we talk about what Purdue's able to do offensively, like one of Durkin or Tyson is going to have to guard TKR. And that's a matchup that TKR should, in theory, be winning. So there's a little bit of give and take there because on the other side, TKR is probably going to have to guard him out on the perimeter or somebody else. So we'll see exactly how they get into that. But shooter should be shooting better, more of kind of a glue guy, complementary role player.
Okay. And if Willis is out from injury, which you just said he is for the rest of the year, right? That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. When you go to the bench, nobody else that they have left on the bench is averaging more than 3 points a game. So I'm just going to let you roll with the whatever description you want of the two or three players that they have left that are going to have to try to provide some backup minutes to these starters.
Yeah. So against Indiana, these three, they played a combined 22 minutes. Right. It is very much just going to be not a whole lot of bench minutes is basically kind of how Medved's going to go with this. Grayson Grove is the one guy that for sure will play 6'9" backup, redshirt freshman. He plays the center spot. I think he's more of a natural four. Him and Osma were the only two returners from last year Minnesota squad, with obviously the coaching changeover. Is somebody that like honestly he's just been fighting. Like he's been fighting really hard, and I think he's playing out of position. I think he's being asked to do a lot more than maybe he initially expected to. He's having to sort of be a rim protector. He's having to be a good rebounder. He's having to be somebody that is going to be trying to work inside of the paint more. I think there's room for him in terms of his kind of post up game. Maybe not this year, but long term more. Somebody that is just going to be more of a hustle guy for now and really gave IU some problems in his limited minutes just because of that hustle that he was able to give. Solid enough rebounder too at his size, but is going to give up a ton of weight to really any of the bigs that he guards from Purdue's side. So he's somebody he will play for sure. He'll be the one guy that absolutely is going to be the backup. Kai Shinholster, true freshman. I'm really high on him long term, but he's more of a scoring type wing, good shooter, has enough handle to be able to go to create, can be a secondary facilitator. Has been very hit or miss on terms of whether he plays or not. Only played 6 minutes against Indiana, but played like 22 the game before against Santa Clara. So can be kind of a scorer, can get hot pretty quick. And then the last guy, Nehemiah Turner, true backup center, 6'10", 270 pounds. He might play more this game just because they literally need big bodies. But he's somebody that just right now is simply not really in the rotation, except for injuries are existing. Um, Going off of like his film from Central Arkansas the year before, like he's a fun big that can pass, that has quick hands. He is out of shape. He is a big boy. Not too much touch outside of the rim. So somebody that just hasn't really fit into what Medved wants so far.
Gotcha. As we turn and kind of look at like what Purdue should be able to do offensively against this team, how Purdue will match up defensively. I want to start defensively first because this team is not an offensive juggernaut. They're like 101st, I think, in Ken Palm offensive efficiency. I did update that, did I?
They're
Oh,
123rd.
123rd in Ken Palm offensive efficiency. So not like an offensive juggernaut, but you look at them and their size and their length that they have across from their 1 through 4, and what they can do at the 4 spot in terms of how they score, does to me present some interesting matchups in terms of how Purdue will try to defend this team. So I guess who do you think matches up against who, 1 through 4? And what do we do defensively against this team given their offensive strengths?
So I have two kind of lines of thought. One would be the traditional, I think would be probably CJ on Langston Reynolds, Braden on Asama, Fletch on Tyson, TKR on Durkin, and Clough on Jalen Crocker Johnson. Also, we're working under the assumption right now Viola isn't going to be back. Obviously, that changes things. It honestly can maybe make it a little bit simpler for Purdue if he is back. But working under the assumption he is not. I think that would be the normal one, right? And basically what they're going to do is just try to limit drives, force threes, and if Minnesota happens to get hot this game, probably adjust from there. Have to be very much attached off ball, so that is something to be worried about. As we've kind of talked, though, the one thought I've had, and I don't know if this will happen, if we think back to like the Illinois game, was that 2 years ago where Edie started on Rogers? Um, I don't know if
Hmm.
they do this because Reynolds handles the ball more than like what Ty Rogers did, but they could go with like TKR on Langston Reynolds, CJ on Cade Tyson, and then that puts more natural like Braden on Asama and Fletch on Durkin, and TKR Clough on the other on Jalen Crocker Johnson, whoever isn't on Reynolds. I think they could do that given Reynolds just not going to be a shooter and he only shoots at the rim really. Um, that could be a way they can kind of counter that and still similar concepts of trying to take away the paint, force Minnesota to be a 3-point shooting team. Do not let them get to the free throw line, although they have been a very bad free throw shooting team. They get to the line a ton. So those are kind of my two lines of thinking as what I could see Purdue kind of doing. But from a scheme standpoint, I know I've said this, but like it is just a lot of what they've been doing. Last game, there was a lot more breakdowns defensively than what we've seen, especially in that second half. So just trying to get back on track because this is a team that will punish you off ball, and Purdue's off ball defense hasn't been necessarily awesome so far.
Yeah, and I would be really shocked to see that against Minnesota. That Illinois team was really good. It feels like
Mhm.
that's one of those things you pull out. To me, Purdue should handle Minnesota and like that without having to pull out some sort of, I don't want to call it a gimmick defense. It was a beautiful idea. It was a beautiful design specifically for a team where Ty Rogers just can't shoot from outside at all and allowed them to change everything they wanted to do from a matchup standpoint from there. But maybe they will, but it just feels to me like, I don't know. Purdue should feel like they should be able to just match up and handle these guys. But that's interesting. I like the thought. I like the thought. We'll see if they do it. Um, I'm really interested to see who they put on Tyson.
Yeah, and that's even if they don't go with the weird one, like it wouldn't shock me if like CJ was on Tyson. I think it gets a little weird if he does, but I wouldn't be shocked because if not, it's gonna be a lawyer. Well, I don't know. It would make honestly now that I keep talking, it makes sense for any of them. Like Braden's been good off ball. Tyson's more of an off ball scorer, so like maybe, but um, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that they can go with this.
Gotcha. Will be interesting to see. Offensively, we've already talked about that Minnesota gives up a lot of threes and allows a relatively high percentage. They want to try to keep everybody out of the paint. with that high hedge, how do you see Purdue attacking?
This feels like TKR big bounce back game. He should be there in the short roll. Now his facilitating is going to have to be there. They will definitely tag and stunts on to his short roll for sure, but he's going to have the size advantage regardless of really who they put on him. Maybe they throw Crocker Johnson on him, in which case Clough should then be the one eating down low. But it feels like this is a game where you get TKR involved, have guys knock down threes because they're going to be there. And then, like, I don't think this is a great perimeter defense. I think they're fine, but Braden out of pick and roll is still going to be able to find him looks. Like, I know he had 6 turnovers against Iowa State, but I really don't think that tells the story. Like, I thought he was
Mhm.
pretty good of getting Purdue looks. Purdue just happened to go 3 of 16 on open threes, which is just going to hurt. But another game where Braden should be able to just pick the defense apart a bit. Um, Purdue's just got to knock down shots. Like, it's weird saying that, but it's more of just a recency bias from last game. They're still shooting over 40% from three on the season. Uh, this feels like a game where they should be able to just bounce back.
Yeah, it feels like a game to me too, where if TK makes the right read in that short roll, there should be shooters open, and Braden getting downhill and getting 2 feet in the paint should draw defenders. Those 3-point shots should be there. Just got to knock them down, like you said. All right, let's that takes us to kind of the keys to the game. I think that segues in real quick. I'm gonna give my first one. Just with all the off ball movement, my key to the game is defensive communication. Because especially we've seen Purdue get burnt against team that run those back cuts, those 45 cuts. And one thing you've heard Painter talk about is he even all summer in practice, his team's got to communicate louder. They got to communicate more often. I think that's going to be especially important on the defensive side of the ball. So that's key number one for me, Joe.
Yeah, for me, honestly, it's just to just come out and throw the first punch. Like, just kind of be like, all right, like Minnesota, they're coming off an emotional win. Purdue's coming off an emotional loss. Like, just come out. You're the better team. Throw the first punch. Set the tone early, and don't let Minnesota just kind of get any life and get any like, oh yeah, we can do this type thing. Just yeah, shaking off last game specifically coming out. And it kind of, I guess, correlates with the other key would be just knocking down some threes. Like, they're going to get them. I think those two probably go hand in hand. I right. If Purdue starts 0-4 from three, it's going to be a little bit of like, hey, what's going on? Just come out strong. And if that happens, like, Purdue should be in a very good spot to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go defense on the other side, or for my other key to the game too, just because, like, to me, this is a little bit of Purdue's kryptonite on the defensive side of the ball is figuring out a way to stop a 6'7", 6'8" wing that can shoot from outside or take it inside, and that to me is going to be an interesting matchup anytime we see Purdue face a guy like this. Obviously, not as many weapons around Cade as what Iowa State had around Momcilovic and Jefferson, I guess if you want to call them both wings that are around that size. So it's going to be different, right? And Purdue's going to be able to help more and scheme more and do things differently than what they did against that Iowa State team. But they still got to slow them down, figure out a way to stop them. I would hate to be the team that plays Purdue after Purdue loses in Mackey in any game. I would really hate to be the team that plays Purdue after Purdue got beat by 23 points in Mackey. I fear for Minnesota and the fact that this might just be an absolute bloodbath from the jump as Purdue looks to bounce back and comes back on fire. But we'll see. Give me your prediction for the game.
Well, I want to hear yours first. I'm curious what
Okay.
yours is with the.
Okay. I'm on man, that tempo though, Tempo's slow for both sides. I'm gonna go like 88 to 60.
Okay, because I've had that train of thought too, and then as I dug in a little bit more, it's like, oh, Minnesota should probably, but also keep it at least a little closer. But also, like you said, like Purdue just dominates in these types of like bounce back spots. I'll go closer to you. I think it'll be like 85 to 62 feels right. So I think it's a game
Okay.
Purdue shoots close to 50% from three. Um, and I think Purdue is going to come out very focused and very intense, and that should mitigate some of the potential things that Minnesota could have going for them.
Yeah. And I guess one other thing I do want to see is I want to see TK and Clough dominate. Like we felt like they should have had an advantage against Iowa State, and it did not necessarily carry out that way. Um, they got way more size down low. Like they've and Jacobson when he's in there too. Like they've got to dominate the glass. They've got to dominate point paints in the point paint for me, even though Minnesota tries to cut that off as well. Both teams are going to try to cut that off. I think Purdue still has to dominate in terms of the advantage there. Um, Real quick, and then we can wrap up because I've seen some chatter out there. People saying Painter likes to make lineup changes after losses like we saw the other day. Do you envision anything coming from a lineup change at all?
I hadn't even crossed my mind. Like I don't even know. I don't know what it would be because I don't think Jakari or Meyer have played good enough to like take CJ spots. I think Lawyer, Braden, TKR are locked in. I think they like what they have with Clough starting and Jacobson off the bench. So I don't see anything. Maybe there's some back end rotation minutes, like that could maybe be something a little bit different. But I don't see anything major coming.
I'm 100% with you. I don't see anything major coming either. Um, Kind of alluded to it in the last show or in the post game wrap up. I am really interested to see if Painter does decide to try to give Benner any minutes at the 3 spot. Specifically in matchups like this where we're facing a 6'7" guy that we have to defend. So that's the people who were talking, is there going to be a starting lineup change? I'm like, no, like where? But I would
Yeah.
be interested to see if they tinker with anything down the rotation a little bit. So
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe Benner getting some minutes at the three, maybe. Um, just yeah, like you said, because of the size, that'd be the only thing really I could see coming. Um, I don't know, I don't see too much drastic change besides that. So, do you got anything else for the preview?
I do not.
All right, make sure to like and subscribe on the way out. We will be live following the Purdue game shortly after the final buzzer. It is a 7 o'clock Eastern Time tip on Big Ten Network on Wednesday, December 10th. So, like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and you'll get notified as soon as we do go live. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will see you after the game.